So now we're going to discuss Dragonstone, as we said in the end of the first part, and I guess overall, now this one was an area that got introduced kind of cold to people in the first episode. Now the first two episodes were kind of difficult episodes.
I felt that we overall got less than one might expect, but on the other hand, if you look at the number of chapters, there really isn't that many in the book.
There's basically Crescent's prologue, and then there's the 3 Davos chapters, and only one of them takes place in Dragonstone, and the other two
And if you look at the comparison that was done with the number of minutes, Davos actually has a little more screen time than he would have had. So they actually did increase it a little bit, but even that, the characters still, they really don't get much room.
No. I like the cast. I like all the cast there. I was happy with, particularly some people don't like Stephen Delane as Stannis. I thought, a lot of people started changing for Tune in the later episodes. They were happy. I was happy with him right off, I could see. But I mean, I'm a great admirer of his. I love his work as Thomas Jefferson in HBO's John Adams series. I knew he could really get that taciturn, very sort of, emotionless or cold manner.
For me, he came across as a little bit sort of peevish rather than sort of grinding his teeth hard. But for the most part, I liked the way he came out. I think that they did a really good job casting. The aging up of Davos is a little. I mean, it doesn't quite resonate in the same way, I guess. The fact that he comes across as sort of a older father figure to Stannis instead.
I mean, he is older,
but he comes across as
too much older.
Too much older, I think.
Which is kind of funny because the fact is, Stephen Delane is actually a fair deal older than him.
Yeah, but the beard and sort of the he looks. It does seem like he is quite a bit older, actually.
Yes, and speaking of Liam Cunningham, I mean, I quite liked him, and he's such a charming person to meet.
Hilarious in interviews and everything,
He's, I thought he did get across. I mean, Davos is personally a favorite character of mine in the series. Him and Catelyn, people say, yeah, really? But yes, because they feel, Davos doesn't feel to me like someone who is outside the norms of human endeavor and effort. He feels...
like a regular guy.
I feel like a regular guy, and I appreciate that.
I certainly, when I reread Clash of Kings before the season, I definitely appreciated him more than in my first read of Clash of Kings, and I think that he came across as, you really get a sense of his plight and everything, and unfortunately I don't think that quite came across as well. They weren't quite, but so much of it is internal, so I can understand it was very hard to capture that.
Yeah, I like the scenes with Mathos, but I mean, I think, and the actor... last name is Logan.
Kerr Logan, I think, yes.
He did a fine job. I liked him.
Yeah.
I love Saldor San. I mean, it's a complete change of a character, but I love Lucian Masmati. He's such a vibrant actor, energetic actor. But
I wouldn't have minded seeing the more flamboyant sort of...
He was pretty flamboyant, but
eccentric in it. I mean, he came across as much more of a bit more hardcore than... I'm sure that Salladhor Saan is quite a ruthless, hardcore man, but he hides it a bit more. He's got a bit more of a polished...
Well, it's actually... There is where I found the age differences much more significant.
Yes, because he's supposed to be white-bearded.
White-haired, old... He's in his 60s or something. And he's he treats Davos a bit as a protege or a foster son.
No, that's
you don't have that relationship.
No, here definitely Davos comes across as... again, as older.
Yeah.
So the whole thing where he's talking about you're not a young man and how long can you be a pirate for, basically.
Yeah.
It seemed a bit odd.
Yeah. But on the whole, I think I like the section. I like the music, the sort of Melisandre, Dragonstone, Stannis theme. That was fantastic. Again, Drawdy. But design, I think one of the details, if you look through the opening, I mean, Dragonstone looks nothing like what George imagines. In the books, Dragonstone looks like a mass of writhing dragons.
It's Valyrian-shaped stone. It's all magic created. So.
They actually, at one point, we saw in art design from one of the designers, the graphic designers for the show, actually released some of her art, and one of them showed that at one point they were trying that one. And they went for something much more angular. But if you look at the opening sequence and you stop at Dragonstone. Just look at the whole...
The shape of as you see it on the map, the outline.
Like, it's a dragon with its wings spread. I thought, clever, nice. And then we have Melisandre. And I mean, Chris Van Houten's a beautiful woman, and so, I mean, that's...
She's a pale redhead, of course.
She's not a red... Well, she's pale, she's not a redhead, so who cares, right?
Well, in the show she is.
Yes, of course, she's a pale redhead. No, okay, that's finished.
That's Melisandre.
She did just fine. They didn't give her the red eyes. I mean, that's not really a problem.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
Her costume design disappointed me, but then again, a lot of the costume design disappoints me.
Yeah,
so
it
feels very modern.
You wouldn't really be shocked at someone wearing a dress like that.
No, today. A carpet event or something.
Yeah.
So, but I think that I like the design for her necklace, and on the whole, I think she captured the strangeness of
strange worldliness. I mean, her native accent. She's a Dutch actress.
Yeah, it works well. I think. Yeah.
Now, some people did have an objection, which is the relationship between Stannis and Melisandre being so explicitly spelled out. And some said, "Oh, but they're not doing that."
Yeah.
It's very funny though, because Carice Van Houten was responding to people on Twitter, quoting from a line
from Dance with Dragons, in fact,
where
makes it very explicit that
quite explicit, yeah.
She and Stannis are definitely having a physical relationship. Yeah. Now, I did have an issue with the way it came about, with how she explicitly promised him a son and played on that. I'm not quite sure that was what happened that we didn't get to see in the books, because it seemed like, would she really set herself up for, she knows she's sort of lying to him. I mean, she knows that it's going to be her little shadow baby, and how is she really going to risk his trust in her by this sort of kind of lie that she's doing?
Yeah, I think I
didn't have a problem with them skipping the mystery of are they or are they
not. No,
but,
this is true.
But the way she seduced him.
Yes, I mean, I don't have a problem with the fact that she does, but yes, it does kind of raise the question, because I mean, if she's trying to get him to trust her, but she then says, "Oh, I'm getting your son," and that's
by the way,
it's a monster. It's a shadowy monster,
shadow baby assassin. But
I guess one could take the implication where she's implying that, maybe not now, but down the road, I'll give you an actual son. As Melisandre, or as Carice Van Houten notes, she knows her character is much older than she appears.
Yeah, I don't think she's having babies anytime soon.
Other than shadow babies.
Yeah.
Yeah. But on the whole, I quite liked it. I think the only thing I was really disappointed about Dragonstone was the introduction period, because I think they made a complete hash of the Crescent character.
It's one of those prologues that George does some beautiful prologues and some really very emotional chapters, and they lost all of that, really.
And I mean, it was so clumsily done, because you don't understand. I mean, we covered this in a previous, because it's not about Crescent. Oh, who cares about Crescent? Well, it's not really about him.
It's about showing Stannis.
It's about showing Stannis with light, because he feels so much. So I suggested, well, they should have dropped Crescent entirely. They were going to cut that whole story. I mean, who cares about this random old maester that no one knows anything about? We have no idea why he cares so much.
Yeah.
Just make it one of those zealous knights who's afraid of it all, who's cursing people for following this false god, and have him do it. It was probably, I mean, those first 2 episodes were quite rough. They were among the most disliked episodes on the forum.
Yeah.
The most disliked episodes of the whole series, in fact. On the one hand, tip of a hat to Benioff and Weiss for taking on that challenge, not handing it off to someone else. They probably knew it was quite difficult.
Yeah.
But it was also the issue that we see, that episodes that have too many focal points are really tough. And there's nothing to do about it. They have to introduce Dragonstone. But at the same time, it seems to be more of an argument for
maybe we didn't have to revisit everyone else at the first episode. It is a bit of a TV convention, and maybe they should, again, dare to be more unconventional.
What it should happen, and I don't know if HBO has it or not, is after the end of the first episode, they give you the end, next week on Game of Thrones, and they'll show you, we'll see the little girl, then. We'll see this, that, and then. Maybe it's something we'll discuss more towards the end of it, because I really want to discuss the structure of a series.
And then, of course, we had the little quibble there about Stannis ultimately in King's Landing, where turning him into action hero Stannis is...
But not George's choice.
No, it seems to have been a choice
Neil Marshall and
ended up during the direction, basically. Well, they placed him...
At the wall,
and then...
The question, of course, even at this stage...
Who placed him at the wall? Was it George, or was it in a rewrite of the script?
Because someone said, and I don't know if this is true, claimed that there was a scene with Stannis... He wrote a scene with Stannis in some sort of command tent, which seems to suggest a very radical, different approach to what was going on. Like,
right.
I know the idea Stannis is supposed to be on the other side of the river, And they insisted, no, let's put him on this side of the river, and let's then have him under the walls. I don't really have a problem so much with that, with him being the first man on the shore and so on, but I would have given him some fighting there, and then just being the commander, sending men to fight and
just
die.
to show the different types of the way a commander can function. I mean, just because somebody isn't first in line waving his sword doesn't mean that he is a coward like Joffrey. It can just mean that he is a different type of commander. I mean, you've got the Robs that lead from the front and are in the thick of the fighting, and that's where their men need him to be. Whereas Stannis' men, they know him. They know that he does his best work having a good overview of everything and leading them, and they want him to be in control over the whole situation, not at the front waving a sword.
Yeah, it's an interesting point.
He's in a fight if he ends up being, in the thick of it. He's in no way a coward. But the way he leads is by having an overview.
Yeah, I mean, he's like on the football field. He's the quarterback, and the quarterback shouldn't be
that's
mixing up on
the
offensive line. He shouldn't say, "Oh no, I'll be in the offensive line." No, I mean, I'm sure that'd be helpful, but you'd be more useful in the back, deciding where the ball goes. So, let's go to the other Baratheon brother. Now, this is sort of a big catch-all for the Tyrells and for Renly. Now,
Brienne briefly, really, as well.
And Brienne briefly, because Geoff and Anthony miss him. I liked his portrayal. I mean, they changed the character to suit his talents, I think. So his character is a bit different than what is in the books. But again, because it comes out well, I don't mind.
No.
And we don't mind it at all, really.
I really liked it.
And the fact they took the advantage of showing the relationship with Loras.
And then I think that here they showed also, they did bring out those sides of Renly that perhaps we didn't see in the
confident
first, the confident and the way that we saw that he was, interacting with the fact that he's supposed to have a good hand with, both the nobles and the various commoners, men, his commoners, his soldiers, and all of that. He's very personable. People love him, basically, and I think that came off very well here. Yeah. That they really built up that side of him.
His death, on the other hand, didn't come out well, and this one we've discussed it at length before, so we won't spend too much time. But I think everyone wanted that one to come out sort of really well, and as it is, it was so abrupt. And I think the problem was the editing; they cut so quickly, and that was because of the fact that it was shot completely differently to begin with.
Yeah. Originally they tried to have the shadow sort of coming up, sneaking along the walls, basically, and then you think for a moment that it is Renly's shadow, and then the shadow draws a sword, and
yes, and the director David Petarka said he did it. He was trying to do it all in one shot for practical effect. It was in I haven't looked back to see if they dropped it yet, but in the HBO Go interactive features, they had a video of this, revealed this. Yeah. They may have pulled it since when it revealed.
Since it actually revealed that something that they didn't actually ultimately use. But,
because it was all about it. It was all about how he tried to do it in one shot, and you could see a guy dressed in a stand-in in Baratheon armor with the helmet and the sword, and that's a stand-in for Stannis' shadow appearing. And they were going to do it entirely practically, and you could even see it because you could see how prominent Renly's shadow was against the back of the wall of a tent. That was a leftover from the fact, but so he changed it, and to change it, they had to apparently cut a lot to make it so you have these really quick flashes that just didn't work well. Presumably, they changed it for a good reason. That it didn't work the way it was done either.
But I mean, it seems like they already made the choice, for example, of not having the shadow cutting through his gorget.
No, that's true.
Which would have been just adding to the sort of supernatural and horrifying. I mean, this is one of George's horror moments in the books.
This punch through his... Or was he wearing his armor at that point?
No, I don't think he was even wearing the armor, actually.
No, okay.
So you really don't get this very horrifying... The blade kind of evaporates like a Nazgul blade, I think, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. The effects are cool. Pixel Mondo is in fantastic work.
But I would have wanted more horror.
Yeah. Certainly, and
blood. There should have been blood all over. I mean, that's part of the thing. I mean,
I think the other part of it, of course, is the fact that it came off the end of the previous episode, which was so fantastically horrific.
Exactly.
And frightening and creepy with the
really
shadow's birth.
We were going to get this horror element, because it is really one of those things where George standing out and using his horror writing expertise and really getting how terrifying it is when the shadow comes in and all of a sudden, the blood, when he cuts Renly's throat and the blood is all over, and I think, and then of course Brienne's reaction. This is kind of plays into the problems that we have. While we think that Gwendoline Christie is superbly cast as Brienne, we do have problems with how they decided to write the character, in that they are writing her as a ruthless killer.
Yeah.
And as I said, she's Sansa with a sword. She's a naive young girl. She never killed anyone before. I mean, she kills someone much later in the books than she does here, and it's a horrifying experience for her.
It's a sort of trial by fire for her, and it is very much part of her character. And
but here she's not, because in the books when Renly is killed, she is quite
overcome,
and it is Catelyn that takes charge again.
Yeah.
They give stuff from Catelyn.
I mean, she fights to defend herself.
She fights to defend herself,
and
but it is
cuts
Catelyn,
off someone's hand as well.
Yeah, but it is Catelyn that has to basically do the thinking, saying, you know, we have to get out. You have to. She's the one who takes charge and takes care of. She sees that, you know, despite her sword and despite her skill, this is still a young girl who's absolutely overcome by shock and grief.
Yeah.
So she's the one who is the person of action, really. Even though yes, Brienne does defend herself when she has to.
Yeah.
That's sort of innate
part
to
of
her.
that is because they dropped the whole thing of Robot Royce and her going out and convincing him to hold them off.
True.
So I mean,
But they could still have shown Catelyn as the more decisive, because even afterwards they give the line of having recognized the shadow as Stannis' shadow to Brienne instead of leaving it with Catelyn.
Yeah.
So it's that whole thing of taking things from Catelyn and giving them to other people.
Yeah. The other thing Catelyn does in the book is after she convinces Robar, she grabs a brazier and knocks one of the guards on the head to help free up Brienne so they can get away from there. So that's another. It's like the moment in the first season at the High Road. She cuts the throat of one of the people, and they instead they just leave her cowering. It's okay. Loras Tyrell.
Yeah. Now this was probably the part that actually I don't know. I was so angry about it, because this is not something we see obviously in the books. We only hear later about how Loras reacts when he learns that Renly has been killed. Yeah. And I was thinking, wow, this is such a great moment. They're going to get that. They're going to show it, because we have, you know, we've had Loras and Renly as, you know, direct point of view, so to speak. Of course, we're going to see his absolutely mad with grief when he slaughters some of his fellow Rainbow Guards. Yeah. It just basically, when you were writing down your notes there, you were saying, you know, that's his Achilles moment, and
single muse of the rage of Sir Loras. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, that's exactly what it is, and we don't get it.
We don't get anything like it. I mean, we don't have time for the action scene. You know, they don't need an action scene. Is the thing that I've said. You know, a couple of dead bodies in the background, a bloody sword, a passing reference. Yeah. And him saying they shouldn't have let him die.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they're playing him as upset. There's nothing wrong with that, but there should have been, you know, blood, and there should have just been the stress and everything. Yeah, I can't understand passing up the opportunity to do something like that.
I can't help but think that an actor like Finn Jones was really hoping that he'd get to do it, and then
yes, and also we know that from interviewing him that his audition scene was the scene where he confronts Brienne and thinks she was the one who killed Renly, and now they drop it right away. What a wonderful angsty thing to have later on for another season. But no, he has already decided it isn't Brienne. Why simplify it so much with such a character moment?
They should have had, if they wanted to keep the idea that he was also going to blame Stannis, he was like, well, Brienne did it for Stannis, so we know that her father was good friends with Stannis, or was good friends with Stannis, or you know, whatever. They could have contrived anything to keep that element.
I'm convinced he would have done a good job of it.
I think he would have done brilliantly.
I think he would have done a brilliant job. So
I think he's done very well. I mean, from what little we've seen him.
Yes. I think he's getting across the fact that Loras is really unhappy. So I think that having had the chance to get more rage and grief out in a more extrovert way would have been perfect.
And more complicated, because obviously in retro, I mean, he kills innocent men who really didn't have anything to do with it. So at the same time, it complicates the character.
In fact, I was certain that they were going to do it based on the first season, when we have Loras being the one who's pushing Renly into making a claim. Aha, that's perfect. Now I can feel even guiltier about Renly's ultimate death.
Yeah.
Now they can really play that up. Nothing. I was so disappointed. I was really gutted by it. Really gutted.
Yeah, no, I couldn't understand it. And then of course we see him later on, very very briefly, really at the Blackwater, they've given him the role of Renly's ghost, which is in the book. It's actually his older brother Garland. There's 3 sons of the Tyrrell house. There's the heir Willis, then there's Garland, then Loras. Loras is the most famous. He's the one who's the glory hound, who goes to all attorneys, who's Knight of Flowers. Garland is revealed in the books too.
He's actually the better swordsman.
Yeah, Loras admits himself. People say, "Oh, he's so arrogant." Well, he admits, "My brother's a better swordsman than I am."
Loras is the better jouster, but Garland is the better swordsman.
Some people take it that because Garland is a better sword, Loras doesn't know how to swing a sword. That's not exactly the idea you should take. George has said he is one of the great warriors of the realm. Yeah. He's a sort of almost supernaturally talented young knight.
Yeah.
But so they give him that role, and it works fine. I wouldn't have minded just a little bit more. The funny thing is, they kind of gave it away in an early sneak peek or preview behind the scenes video, because you see a glimpse of Tyrrell men marching through the doors of the throne room of the Red Keep, and then at their head is a guy in armor suspiciously like Renly's. I was pointing out to our gallery. That's kind of suspicious.
Yeah.
And I figured, okay, and that the height and the slimness, that's Finn Jones as Loras Tyrrell. So that's what so I knew kind of months ago, but that was going to be what they did. It worked pretty well. Something that maybe worked a little less well, Marjorie. Now, okay, I have no problem with him aging up the character as such. I mean, it'd be nice to have a young, politically savvy character. Like, you get someone like Joffrey's age who actually knows what the hell she's doing.
Because you get people constantly questioning that about the books. Oh, it's unrealistic that you have these 15, 16-year-old leading armies or being politically savvy, and it's not. If you look at, it's not like every 15, 16-year-old in the Middle Ages was doing that, but it happened, and we didn't have the extended childhood and that we have today, so exceptional individuals had the opportunity to do things like that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Now, not necessarily pleased with Natalie Dormer in the role. We disagree on her role as Anne Boleyn in the Tudors. I thought she did fine.
Well, you think she did fine in the context of the Tudors, which
in the context of the Tudors, but it's a kind of a tawdry historical show, and I'm not sure. I
don't think that she stood out as bad in the Tudors or anything like that. I think as she was on the level of most of the actors. There were a few outstanding actors in the Tudors, but most everyone was on a bit of a lower level than I would say Game of Thrones largely is.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of disappointed that they basically seem to have imported Anne Boleyn as...
That's the main thing to me. It feels very
making
similar.
her not just older, but all of a sudden she's kind of I was going to use another word, but...
Kind of like a slut?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, this whole... officially a virgin and...
Well, and I saw people point out Marjorie's innocent look at the... when she's at the presenting herself to Joffrey.
And then just the whole thing with the scene with Renly, I mean, I was, kind of flabbergasted and laughing, and not in a good way, the whole thing. Oh, maybe we should bring in my brother. It's... I don't know. I didn't like how that was played at all.
It felt a little juvenile. It felt like someone thought that would... that'd be funny.
Oh, yeah. That would be so funny. No.
I don't know what to say. I hope for the next 2 seasons they did give her some good meaty stuff. The fact that they're giving us Olenna was a surprise to me, because I figured over making her much more overtly political, because there's not going to be an Olenna Tyrrell, the Queen of Thorns, as her grandmother, she's essentially the protege of her grandmother. And I think Weiss and Benioff in one of the Inside the Video says, all the Tyrrell men are kind of lunkheads, handsome, dashing, brave lunkheads, and it's the women who are really the power behind them. So Marjorie, and we'll see with Olenna. I was surprised. I thought they weren't going to have her. But hopefully with her there, she'll be interacting more and doing
I think an
interesting job.
The age difference also, I'm not sure how much we should be revealing, but obviously there's going to be some interacting between Marjorie and Sansa, and I think that the age difference, because there's no way, Marjorie is anything under 20.
Yeah.
And that's being generous, I think.
Yeah.
So that makes her quite different from Sansa in age, and so I'm not sure I like that either. It makes her much more of a direct foil for Cersei, and that's obviously what they wanted. But
Oh, speaking of Cersei, let's move on to King's Landing.
Yeah.
So before we get into Cersei, let's start with Tyrion, of course. Peter Dinklage, fucking brilliant, wonderful. There's so many superlatives you can give to him.
Yeah, I mean, as that in the first season, I didn't really see as in what was so really brilliant, because I didn't think the material didn't.
Except episode 6.
Yes, except that there was. I didn't think there was enough meat to it. Basically, what he was given to really show off that he was so head and shoulders above the rest of the cast to get all the attention, basically.
And to win the Emmy, yeah. So.
Yes, I mean, if I'd been handing out the Emmy, I would be giving it to Harry Lloyd, and that's not just because he's got gorgeous cheekbones, because I think he really killed it as Viserys, and he would, had the most moving scene for me by far. Really.
No, that was a great scene.
So, but in this season, I fully, I think Peter Dinklage has done an absolutely fantastic job.
Would you predict that he'll get the Emmy again?
Yes, if anyone is getting it, surely it's him, unless they are going to be really, really shocking and going with, like Maisie Williams or something.
Yeah, different categories, of course, but
yes, of course. Yeah.
But Alfie Allen is one but unfortunately, I think, in Alfie, in my interview with him, he kind of mentioned, well, Peter's so amazing, so I don't think he has any realistic hope.
No, but it's probably, I'd say that because Peter Dinklage already got it once, it's probably be fairer to sort of
spread it around.
To spread it around, but I don't think they think that way. I think each of them are absolutely deserving.
The thing is, HBO has put him forward in the supporting category again, even though with over 90 minutes of screen time this season.
He's definitely the main character.
He's definitely but far and away.
Yeah.
He is.
But certainly, Clash of Kings is Tyrion's book very much.
Yes, it is. So it's interesting that they they did that, but it's much more. And then of course they're giving like Steve Buscemi for leading man in that kind of. So in part, I don't think they want their shows competing very much. But the other part is simply the sense that it's very much an ensemble show. So even if Peter is first in the credit and you see him pretty much every episode and everything, he's the guy.
I think he's in every episode.
Yeah, is that true? It may well be.
Yeah. Now, just because we love the acting, of course, there are some little niggles that we had that we didn't necessarily love about how Tyrion was written, in the sense that I think it is a shame that they are cutting out all the hard edges.
It's true that they've made him a bit softer and a bit nicer than he was in the books.
Basically, I think the least nice thing he does on the show is send Jon Snow to the wall.
He says some mean things to Cersei, but...
Well, who doesn't want to say mean things?
He slaps Joffrey.
Oh,
that's not like...
Who doesn't want to say mean things to Cersei and slap Joffrey, though?
No, it's true. In the book, the character's a little bit harder edged. Yeah. He signs the death warrants of these antlered men without really investigating it. He, in the next season or next book, he kind of realizes, some of this seems a little fishy that I killed off these guys, because they seem to have some dealings with Littlefinger that have complicated things. Yeah. Financial dealings, basically, with the crown through Littlefinger, and there's some stuff there. But he also, of course, when he sends Janos Slynt away, he sends some other men. Yeah. Basically, Slynt brings forward all these replacements for him as commander, and he recommends kind of the most corrupt, wicked men around. And so Tyrion sends them up and says, the one who killed that baby, the Bara. Make sure that he doesn't finish the trip, have him pushed overboard. Yeah. So he kind of casually has people murdered. Yeah. He signs executions. And, at one point when he's having essentially a fight with Shay, because not all sweetness and light is in I want to say sweetness and light throughout this whole season, because she kind of throws it in his face sometimes when he just assumes that she'll just do whatever he says. But, he slaps her because he felt insulted or something.
And then, of course, the big one that they cut out is that, his plotting to send Myrcella away to Dorne really is not to be mean to Cersei. That is a political move, largely. But he also has Tommen grabbed.
Yes, that's very true. Well, I completely forgot when I was writing my notes, but that's a major... for those who haven't read the books, what happens is Cersei is planning to have Tommen taken away in secret to Rosby, to keep him safer, in case King's Landing falls. It's actually kind of a nice touch that she's thinking about. Yeah. In case this happens, at least we shouldn't have all the heirs in one basket. Tyrion has that intercepted. And taken over, and he tells Jacelyn by water, Iron Hand, the commander of the City Watch.
And this is the reason that Cersei ultimately goes and grabs what she thinks is his whore.
Yeah, because he thinks he's planning to hurt Tommen or whatever. And so, I mean, and the thing that happens is that Tyrion says, whatever you have done to my woman, who's in fact in the book is Alayaya, on the show it's Ros, was, I will visit on Tommen.
Yeah.
That includes the rapes.
Yeah.
So, you know, she's telling her to not let her men do anything to her.
Yeah.
And literally Tyrion struggles. He said it.
Yeah.
He said he had to do it. Because obviously in the third book he's learned that Alayaya has been scourged.
Yeah.
And so he feels, well, do I have to have Tommen whipped?
Yeah.
But if
but I think it was ultimately it's Tywin's decision.
It's Tywin, yes, but he still feels he needs
to,
because I mean it's basically Cersei hands her off, so he blames her, and like and he's struggling like, do if I don't do it, my word's nothing. No one will believe me when I threaten them.
Yeah.
It complicates the character in such a fine way, and I understand they dropped the whole Tommen subplot because there was a little too much action outside.
But it seems like they're very quick to drop the grayer bits of Tyrion.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. I'm guessing this is another example. I think we'll say, well, we'll keep the darker spiral of a character for the third and fourth season.
Yeah. But this is one where it should be hinted at. It should be shown that he's not old. Another example, of course, is in the first season in the High Road again, because in the High Road, after he survives the attack by Walling, Marillion the Singer is kind of trapped under a dead body, is asking for help, and Tyrion very purposely steps on his hand and breaks his fingers. Yeah. So you have this very vindictive Tyrion. You have him say it a lot, I think, in the series, like, Lannister pays his debts and he wishes this, that, and the other, but he never really goes so far as to do really mean things to people personally, unless it's family, essentially. Yeah, but he does have a vindictive streak, and he definitely shows that in the books. But fine performance. Yeah, all in all, 90% of what one would want. Yeah, Sansa, that's nothing to do with the performance. That's what they decided to write. So Sansa, wonderful. Really pleased. Yeah, really pleased. Sophie Turner has really grown. I was happy in the first season. I think you thought maybe that it wasn't quite all there. That she was a little uncertain, perhaps. But I thought she was cast just right, and she's definitely shown that this season. Lots of really beautifully played scenes, especially later on as we go further. The thing with the Hound, which we'll talk a bit more about later, I think. Yeah. But really, there's not too much to say. She did really well. I think her scenes of Cersei, I know you don't like Cersei, she had much less to do than she could have had, really. They obviously cut some parts of her story. And because in the book, of course, she's meeting with Dontos Hollard in secret as well. And he rather disappeared. He rather disappeared from... We see him at the beginning, and then we have a glimpse of a really quick... blink and you miss it at the... where she's being beaten in front of court, and then he's entertaining at the Queen's... During the Blackwater episode, ballroom. It's not really a ballroom. The makers hold fast, anyways. Yeah. But they pretty much cut him out. I don't know if we'll be seeing much more of him if they decided, but they can't really have that many characters running around. So we'll see where that goes. Now, Cersei, she gets a lot of lines from the books. And that's about all we can say in praise of Cersei. I can't, really. I mean, I was disappointed in the first season, and I still feel that my problems with it largely hold. I don't think... It isn't the same character. I think we can... It's not Cersei of the books, and there are a few things about the show and the comment on the show that make me so angry, as when people say, oh, she's so much better on the show, and they've really done such good justice to this character that George didn't do justice to. This is the same as people who are complaining, saying that, oh, it was so wonderful to see, when they still were thinking that Talisa was in fact Jane, to have this character that George, was not served well by George and left as his minor character. George has a very specific plan for each character, I think. Yeah. He allows some characters to be revealed layer by layer. Some start out in the background and some become more prominent later. And obviously he can't have every character be every bit as prominent. No. Twice as large. Twice as large. I wouldn't stop at that in many characters he does have. So I think that George has a very specific plan for Cersei, the way he's revealed the character, the way he has constructed the character. I don't think there would have been a problem with having Cersei of the books. I don't think she had to be softened up. I don't think she has to talk about her sins, and that line for me was
very out of character.
It was as out of character as her scene with Robert in the first season, where she's talking about, was there ever a chance for us?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I really dislike that that they had to go and try and make her more sympathetic and give things like the murdering of the bastards to Joffrey.
Yeah, that's a big one as well.
I hated that.
I think the show...
Yes, they have to give more to Joffrey because he's older, more assertive.
Yeah.
But again, why are we taking it from Cersei?
Sort of taking stuff from Catelyn as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's.
But in Catelyn's case, it makes it look worse. In Cersei's case, it seems to be to take all the edges off.
Yeah, I think the show has generally been afraid to.
I mean, she
do what George did, because
she is a villain, but that doesn't mean that she should be hated for, and there can be no sympathy for her. I mean, hate her, fine, because she is a villain and she does some horrific things. That doesn't mean you can't be sympathetic to where she comes from.
Everyone's a hero of their own stories, what George says.
And they seem to be afraid of that if we show the real Cersei, we are going to be, told that, we're having this caricature of a female villain that nobody can sympathize with. Well, then write her well enough, like George does, and thoughtful readers and thoughtful viewers will see that there's still something to be sympathetic to, and at least understanding where she's coming from.
I think they could have done a lot of that with sort of how she was treated as a brood mare.
Yeah.
And how her father, I mean, if you think about how he talks about her, they could have had more stuff of Tywin. I mean, oh, mysterious northern girl, you remind me of my daughter. That's actually a bit of, like, praise in his part, and maybe Tywin doesn't quite think of Cersei in that way.
No, that was my objection to that line, really, that I don't think he's ever thought, he doesn't think well of Cersei. He probably thought well of her when she was a young, pretty girl, and
who was going to be very valuable for marriage alliances.
Yeah. But
he never really... No.
That's all the worth she's ever had.
I mean, she has... I think they do give her a line about the way she saw her father look at Jaime, and then at her.
Yeah.
So that gives something of it. But the show has generally been afraid to slow play certain things. I mean, Jaime is pretty much, by the end of the first season, you pretty much already understand that he's misunderstood. But
we've already got all of what we get later from Jaime. So you don't get that wonderful turnabout where he's just this shallow, beautiful, arrogant bastard that there's really very little to feel sympathetic about, and then later on it turns around and you realize, well, there's something more to him.
Yeah, and so and it's the same with Cersei. I mean, it's not pretty. It's not like she becomes. It's not like people start reading Cersei and loving her.
No, I mean people kept saying that because they said, after I read Storm and Sword, that's where Jaime becomes a point of view. I changed my mind and now I love Jaime. And then now I've heard that Cersei's a point of view in A Feast for Crows. I don't want Martin to make me love Cersei. That would be...
I don't think that's really the aim, though. But it's
not
the aim
really the aim
to make you understand her more.
But
so they're not willing to slow play it, and you can say, well, they can't do it for it. And in a certain degree, I can understand. If you're going to have a character present on the show... Maybe you can't hold it off.
No, maybe not. But
I think there was just too quick.
But in Cersei's case, did you really have to change the character entirely?
No.
Yeah.
I don't know. I loved Lena Headey in Aberdeen, and she knows how to play drunk really well. So the scenes in Blackwater, I liked it. I know you didn't feel she was quite spiteful enough, but I liked it. I liked her acting in that one, and I like overall this season she's done better. I will say that. I think in the first season she was so flat in almost all her scenes. There's like 2 scenes I can think of where I really thought, okay, this is getting there to be somebody who feels alive.
But I don't think we're seeing much range.
It's still being quite restrained. I don't know, the way Lena Headey talks, I think she thinks, well, I'll be more effusive the madder I get. As in, crazy mad.
Yeah.
So maybe as the series progresses, they're going to play that angle up.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll become more and more. But anyway, I love her in Aberdeen. Lena Headey really knows. She's a fantastic job, and that's the one I thought, okay, because she plays a character who can be very fiery and very explosive.
No, you showed me a clip from that, and I thought, well, if we'd gotten some of that in Cersei, then...
Minus the Scottish accent she had in that.
Minus the Scottish accent, but...
Yeah. Oh, well. Now, Cersei, Joffrey, we already touched on his...
I mean, he does a fantastic job.
Jack Gleason's fantastic, and he's a very nice fellow, and a fellow who, who, you know, he seems terrific. He sounds, you know, a scholar at Trinity College who wants to become
academic.
It
was interesting. We just read an interview with him where he said he based his performance a bit on Joaquin Phoenix in Gladiator, and I think that actually had passed through my head already that there's definitely some of that.
Very petulant and very cruel, and all that really worked together well. As we said, because he's older, he's more assertive, and I don't really have a problem with that part of it.
They could have perhaps found some other things other than taking things away from Cersei.
Yeah, and I think one of the things they might have done more of is to emphasize the trouble in the city and the unrest beforehand, and how badly he was at it. I mean, so badly that when people were gathered outside begging for food, he got a crossbow out and started shooting at them and taking hot shots at them just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
You have to see that he is a monster, and that this is having a direct impact on everybody. They kind of, on the whole, it's just more of things where you feel like some more throwaway lines just to kind of build up the sense of it. But no, good job from him.
Yeah.
Now, Littlefinger, I have here. He is... I love...
First of all, apparently he has a dragon stashed away somewhere the way he flies all over Westeros.
He moves very... the thing is, as I said in the last part, time and space is not...
No, they're not really keeping
meaning
to that anyway.
Because, I mean, Catelyn does almost the same thing. She goes from Storm's End all the way to the Westerlands in the same space of time, and he goes to Harrenhal. But then he goes, I'll go to Harrenhal tonight to go to Highgarden. And then when we see Tywin next, he says, Stannis is 2 days away. We're leaving tonight, or we're leaving immediately. Like 2 days from Harrenhal to King's Landing. Suddenly the world, I mean, essentially Westeros is about, I guess 85% smaller than it actually.
Yeah. I think it's set in Westeros instead of Westeros.
It's much smaller. That is a problem. I think I'll want to discuss that a little bit, because there's various techniques they might have thought of using to try and sort that out, but we'll see. But the other thing is his depiction. I mean, when someone first suggested Aidan Gillen before the first season, we were right on board.
Yeah.
We loved him in Queer as Folk.
Yeah.
I hadn't yet watched The Wire then, but I've watched it now, and he's terrific as Corsetti.
Yeah.
I thought he has that. There's something a little seedy about him, and a little trustworthy, and it worked, I thought. And in the first season, I was pretty happy, I think. But this season, for the first episode, when they have him be such a rookie, such a stupid thing, comparing...
But I mean, this is all the writing. I don't think...
It's not him.
I mean, I think Gillen could act, again, the real Littlefinger without a problem.
If they gave it to him.
If they gave it to him. But
and the saddest thing is, I was amazed. I didn't think he was the sort to do it, but in an interview he said, I've read all the books.
Yeah.
He's one of the few actors who have read all 5 novels.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And mind you, and he read, presumably realizing with the 5th book, but, he doesn't even show up in it.
Yeah.
But he read it because he wanted to know the material.
Yeah.
And his character is so heart on his sleeve now on the show, and it's so obvious and so...
Which I think is what George is thinking of when he says that he's probably one of the most changed characters.
Yes, that's one of the things.
Because at first, what is it that he's thinking of here? And I think that that's probably spot on, that he's this overly emotional, whereas, Littlefinger is so calculating, so in control, and so...
The example I use is the fact
it's like he's 15-year-old Littlefinger, basically.
Yeah, it's 15, who doesn't really know what he's doing.
Yeah,
he kind of
and the character that he was.
The example I use is the fact that 5 books in, we still don't really exactly know what he wants, what he's up to.
No.
We have a sense. You have a vague sense, but we really don't know what motivates
Whereas
him.
apparently they decided in the first season that they know what Littlefinger wants and had him tell a couple of whores about it.
Yeah, which was not one of the finest
like
moments of the first season.
Yeah, he should just have been twirling his moustache and it would have been complete, basically.
Now, a lot of people point out, of course, his voice has changed a bit between the first and second season.
Yes, definitely.
I
thought it was him maybe speaking in different ways to different people.
Yeah.
But I do think that somebody else has commented that he was trying to change his accent, wasn't quite happy with.
Who knows exactly why, but I think maybe he did change it to...
But it's a bit distracting.
It is distracting. I think some of the vowels now sound a little bit more Irish than they did before, so he may be going something nearer to how he actually speaks. I haven't watched any interviews recently to see how close that is to his actual... I tend to think about the interviews I saw, he tended to be a little more soft-spoken, kind of a little mumblier.
True.
So I'm not quite sure, but he does seem suddenly quite theatrical almost, the way he talks. And I thought, yes, the performance, maybe he's decided to go the angle that Littlefinger is such a...
Which is probably quite true, but he's a more subtle performer.
Yeah. But just the way they use him...
I just think they could have done a lot better with him.
And I have to say, the Harrenhal thing, I thought that was such a cheap ploy for tension.
Yeah.
Because it was really very just, will he recognize Arya?
Yeah.
I found that very cheap. I didn't really care for it.
I think they're misusing him in the sense that he's sort of their go-to guy for... we need some intriguing connections here and there. We'll send Littlefinger around. I mean, he's running all over the place making connections and personally...
I don't have a problem with that side, but
I think that affects how they write the characters, because he needs to be available for all these sort of different scenes and acting in all these different ways. And
he should have gone from Renly's camp to King's Landing, which is much closer. First off, just geographically speaking, and just I know, but they just wanted that cheap tension. The Hound is the last sort of book character we'll discuss in King's Landing, and I like Rory McCann. They haven't Blackwater added 17 minutes of screen time for him, apparently, according to HK47. He has a huge amount of screen time in that episode.
Yeah.
I think more than half of his total screen time is there. Not the Hound of the book, because he's more dour. The rage is maybe much more internal. You don't really see it coming out.
Because the Hound is
he's almost phlegmatic at times.
Yeah, he's much more of an overtly nasty character in the books.
But great stuff. I think his interaction with Jerome Flynn was fantastic. His reaction when he sees that, I couldn't quite hear it what he says when the wildfire blows up. He's
he really captured his fear of fire. I think.
But then, of course, the final scene of Sansa is quite some significant changes, and I think, people say, George wrote this, and this must be how he wanted it. Well, no, the way George wanted it is what you have in the book.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get that out of the way. If it's the canon, what George's ideal...
But George is working within the framework that David and Dan has established.
Exactly. So the framework of what the character is and how they interact with one another... Yeah. And so, there's no threat of rape, there's no demand for a song, there's no kiss or maybe kiss.
Yeah.
There's no white cloak left behind, but they really... And I personally think someone somewhere felt that this relationship was too wrong for television.
Yeah.
I think they felt
so
that
I think
maybe they may be leaving the door open to, 3 or 4 seasons from now.
Yeah.
They can go and revisit it. But right now, I think you San fans are pretty much going to have to forget about it for at least a couple of years.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's a factor it's not going to be a factor at all in Sansa's life.
No.
That's my guess. I could be wrong, but I just don't see how we're going to do it. I don't think they're going to...
No, I think they should decide that.
So, and then one more character who's not a book character. Roz.
Yeah.
Let's talk Roz. Now, see, I did not have a problem with her first episode appearance.
No.
I thought, nice, having someone witness the killing of that baby. Very harrowing, very nasty.
Yeah, fair enough.
And
I'm not sure that I like her, just replacing Chitaya and Alayaya.
Yeah.
We get other Summer Islanders instead, but they're basically the wrong Summer Islanders. We're supposed to have Shataya, who is a woman from the Summer Isles who worships their
gods of love.
And then she's got her daughter who's also a Summer Islander, and that's basically a form of religious prostitution for them. They seem to have wanted to avoid that angle.
Yeah.
entirely, and I'm not quite sure why. And instead we basically get Ross standing in for both Chitaya and Alayaya, and yes, she's already an established character, but...
I mean, I don't have a problem with the economy of it. I don't...
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people had issues. I thought she did fine. I thought the scene with Joffrey was... I think that was a good addition. I mean, again, he's an older character, so I don't have a problem. Because Tyrion, they said, they saw that Tyrion thinks that maybe I should introduce him, but it never happens in the books because he doesn't have the time, and it's a younger character, and so... But
I suppose that is one of the darker sides of Tyrion that we do see, that he's in fact perfectly happy to procure some prostitutes for...
But then they kind of dropped the ball horribly, because then it's kind of... They just mention in passing...
Oh yeah, what he did to your birthday present.
And he... And I would have liked to have seen his immediate reaction, especially when the idea is take her to my uncle, so I wanted to see what Tyrion would say when this completely abused pair of women. And do we see Daisy again?
Nope.
We don't.
No, we don't.
Huh. But what happened then? Did she take off from the city, or did they decide that he had her beat her to death, or what? I find that very strange.
Yeah.
Well, that's a little like loose
No,
end.
I actually thought what was going to happen was that they were basically perhaps going to... that Cersei was going to grab Ross and Daisy and have Daisy killed.
Ah, I see.
That was my speculation.
Yeah.
That was actually what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then no, I don't think Daisy resurfaces. So and all we get is basically Bronn telling Tyrion, after what he did to your birthday present, basically, is like a throwaway line.
It's a bit strange, of course, that they do have to go into contortions to make it work. That Cersei thinks Roz, the prostitute who works regularly in the brothel, the prostitute who Tyrion sends to Joffrey, is his mistress and special love.
Yeah. I'm going to share my special girl with Joffrey.
Maybe she thinks the imp has that kink, and he's just a complete monster that way as well.
Or he's a really nice and sharing uncle.
Yeah. But I think it's a little bit of a contortion. Yeah. I don't mind it so much. Narrative economy.
Yeah. But it's one of those points where you scratch a bit at the paint and you
start realizing that the surface isn't quite there. Next, sort of our biggest section by far.
Well, I guess we should add about Ross. I am not sure I like all the final scene.
Oh yes.
Well, I mean, it's fine. The acting is fine, but okay. So now she's going to be in bed with Varys. Well,
not exactly. I don't know. I'll reserve judgment to see how they fit her in.
It just feels like she's going to be all over.
It's not like she had that many minutes in the show, and most of it was to illuminate other people. This one is the one that sort of seems to actualize her more. I don't know where they're going with it. I'll wait and see. I kind of have some vague notions just based on the books of what's going on in the books of where she could fit in, but wait and see. Karf, that is our big section. So we'll discuss that next. So, Karf is, for you, absolutely the biggest sore spot.
Yes, I mean, partly, A Clash of Kings is not my favourite novel. It's probably my least favourite novel of the 5 so far. Its saving grace for me is Daenerys, who is my favourite character. And I loved the way George did such an unexpected thing with her, in that she ends, at the end of Game of Thrones, she has dragons, and then everyone thinks, well, now she's a conqueror.
Yeah.
No, she has baby dragons, and she has a comet to follow into the desert, and she feels she has a destiny. They wrote a Daenerys who all of a sudden is much more assertive and aggressive. Much more like she can be at a later stage.
Yeah.
And I can see why people watching Daenerys on TV would have the reaction that some book readers have to her, that, oh, she's bitchy and entitled and arrogant. I think that none of that, I don't feel that she is in any of the books, but I could see that in the TV show. I could see that sort of Daenerys, and she certainly isn't in A Clash of Kings. There is none of that behavior is there from her.
No.
She has a very different approach to handling her situation.
Yeah, I think from what I saw of viewers' responses with non-readers and readers, like, people were turning against her.
Yeah.
And now, because she kind of repetitive, a bit tiresome for people, where are my dragons? That's the new waltz of this decade. And
I'll
there's
take
also
what's mine, I'll take what's
constantly,
mine.
yeah, take my mind, fire and blood, fire and blood. It was a little, they hit those notes too often. Now this is arguably what you could see. Oh, this is an arc of, like, she has a failure story. Her story she gets up to Carth and then she fails through episodes 6, 7, 8. And then 10 is she kind of gives a bit of redemption. But I think, first off, for people, I think she was failing a little earlier than 6 because she was coming out a little screechy. I don't think that particular mode of expression is Emilia Clarke's strong point. Her absolute best scene is with Drogo, I think, at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was happy with her in the first season, where she plays the
uncertain,
frightened, or even just starting to sort of take. I mean, I think that her confrontation with Viserys in the first season
that was great.
Was
very
great,
powerful, yeah.
But that sort of came from this sudden rage. Sort of, here she's trying to sort of be assertive and aggressive, and I don't think that, maybe it's the writing letting her down, but I really was quite unhappy with how she came out this season.
Yeah, and then the other thing they throw at her is sort of this sudden lack of trust. I thought she was so... In particular, I thought that episode, which I believe is 7, was so absolutely off-kilter with the way they wrote the character.
She's really happy at first when Jorah returns.
Right.
And then he starts to go, I shouldn't have left you with these people. And then, what do you mean, these people? Who are my people? And is it, it's not the Targaryens, my brother tried to sell me, and...
it's not the Dothraki.
It's not the Dothraki, and, it's, Westeros, they don't even know I'm alive, and...
And then, trust me, there it is. I mean, it came out of the blue. It's the borrowing material from later on. It's very strange how they are running the characters back and forth. With Arya, they put her to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
And I wrote recently, I think the most important thing they have to do is keep on top, keep track with the character development of characters.
Yeah.
I don't think they should be running far ahead. I don't think they should be falling far behind.
No.
And in Dany's case, they sort of are running ahead.
And I mean, the thing that really annoys me about Carth is that, I mean, I think we've had certainly the impression seems to be they didn't trust the material at all.
Basically, I mean,
yes, there are people who don't like those chapters in the book because they are quite particular. But again, this is one of those things where George does something unconventional. He's basically inserting a fairy tale.
The funny thing is, up to episode 6, it's pretty much following. They've changed a little bit. The garden party.
Well, I think that the change still. The way that she's introduced to Carth and the fact that she has the death of Ricaro and all that sets her up to be in a very different mindset. So
fair enough. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. But I mean, I guess in the plot mechanics, it's following pretty.
Yes, but I think in terms of her view of the world.
Yeah. All right. No, that's fair enough.
That's
a fair enough point. That's a fair enough point. And part of it is just Carth in general has been a problem. They deal with it. I mean, it's, as we've talked a lot, I mean, this whole section of the story, from the time of the Dragons of Birth to the time she's about ready to leave Carth.
She kind of enters an otherworldly state.
Yeah, and it takes the couch over, it's not real, it feels illusionary, it feels like a fairy tale.
I mean, all the elements, the whole thing with her sending the riders out, one, each direction, it's like taken straight out of a fairy tale. And then they come back with 3 wise men. 2 wise men and a woman, because they actually bring...
Even on camels, too.
Even on camels, bring her to this dead city where she's waiting. That's actually where she's introduced, to Pyat Pri, to Zaro, and to Quaifi.
And then the other thing is, when you start the next chapter, it's this huge procession to welcome her, and everyone looks like the Lord, and nothing about the intervening space, the city doesn't make any sense in the middle of the desert. Well, it's not actually in the middle of a desert, it's not explained. But basically, we never see it. We never have anything outside of its walls described because it's not supposed to matter. It's this place So I think they missed that, and I think it's strange that they missed it because they kind of more or less follow it for 6 episodes.
Yeah.
But then suddenly they throw in the action of the dragon theft and everything, and the coup that motivated the dragon theft.
And I think Karth is such perhaps the best example of where they decided to replace something in the books with something of their own creation. And it really is just a set. You go beneath the surface and none of it makes sense.
Which makes sense in the book because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Dany's experience of it is very filtered through Martin's very deliberate decision of making
She's not getting a grip on Karth. It's sort of ethereal. She doesn't quite... But of course the interesting thing is that after she's gone through the House of the Undying, after she has burnt away the illusions, so to speak, Karth becomes a regular city. She goes down to the harbour, she takes off her Karthian clothing, switches back into her Dothraki clothing. All of a sudden she's back in the real world, and the distinction between those 2 chapters is like night and day.
Yeah, it's very purposeful. It's not like, when you say, well, you can't do that. Well, I mean, at least, again, through the first 6, other than some of the beats for her character development, it's more or less the same. They could have done it, and they chose not to because they thought, people want action. I think... And the problem is the action they decided that let's give Zorro his coup, king of Karth plot. And the problem is... First
of all, let's replace Zorro as he is with a completely uninteresting character.
I mean, honestly, how many people were really interested in Zorro at the end of the season? I'm sure someone will say they were, but they gave Lonzo Nosey very, very little to do. Or maybe he just did very little of the part. I don't know. I think he's a fine actor. I've seen some of his work. He's great. But this one didn't gel. I don't think it worked for many people. Which is a shame.
And then again, character motivations. Why is he trying to get, this whole thing, marry me and then I'll show you what's inside my empty vault? What was he going to do if Dany married him?
Well, presumably he'd kill her. I mean, I guess the idea is he'll kill her and he'll say, I inherit her dragons. Yeah. And it's all about the rule of law and so on, but... And I guess that now...
why was it necessary for the whole coup thing? Was he just basically there to, nagging her with marriage proposals to not keep her thinking about... I don't know.
If
you start poking at it...
The thing is Karth cannot support that sort of political realism as it is in those chapters and as it is on the show. They didn't bother fleshing it out. No. So there is no context for what he does.
Karth isn't about Dany being caught up in... political machinations. That's not what she's there for. Yeah.
So it felt really weak, really sketchy. No one cares about... I mean, we literally have arguments on the board now about, why didn't she just declare herself Queen of Karth? I mean, 13 are dead. Zorro is dead.
The Warlock of Karth is dead.
The Warlock of Karth is dead. Why is she not just saying, I'm Queen of Karth now? Don't you know that there must be some political structure and there must be other people besides those 13 who ran the city and that they're not going to... Well, no, we don't, because they have no hint of it whatsoever.
Because certainly Zorro doesn't seem to think he has to do anything other than kill the 13 to take power in the city.
I mean, he's living in his manse. There's no sign of increased guards.
Rebellions or...
They could have had Jorah come in that episode 8 and say... There's fighting in the streets between Zorro's factions and others. There's rebellion.
Apparently after he killed the 13, he has Karth in his hand, and that's
because Karth apparently is basically that garden party. There's no one else in the city other than the people we saw in the garden party. That's their failure. That is their failure of choosing the wrong thing. Action up, assassination attempt at the end of 6. Zorro was carrying a sword out. Let him fight and defend her. Then let him use that to again say, look, there's people who want to kill you. I can defend you. Marry me. Wealthiest man in Karth. Will be a great team.
I mean, just a clumsy one now that we have the fact that when the deaths or the dragons are stolen and Eerie is killed in the next episode, they're like, where's Doria? Oh, can't find her. She must be dead too.
Yeah, all the other dead people are right there except her.
Somebody wanted her corpse for something, I think.
They didn't really think it through very well. I know and a lot of people will not think about it very far, and they'll say, well, whatever, it was a good story, but hey, I don't feel, I would be much more forgiving if it was good.
They took out so much from the books, really,
Now, one issue I've seen, some say, it's ridiculous that in the novels no one tries to steal the dragons in Karth, or where she goes next after that.
It isn't.
I think it's implied. I think it's implicit. That there's a reason why they don't do it. In Karth, Zoro's trying to trick one out of her. He's gonna marry her, and then he has a morning gift where in the morning he gets to ask one thing but cannot be denied.
Yeah.
It's all about establishing a legal title.
Yeah.
And then if it's the culture, if it's this very refined, effete culture, very ritualized, very legal.
And the Undying are not gonna go and try and steal dragons.
They're not even after her dragons. They're after her.
First of all, they're after her. She's the magic battery that they want to keep alive, and they know magic. I think they're probably well aware that you cannot just steal a dragon and it's going to. It's not like stealing a dog and then you can tame it.
Yeah. I mean, yes, people could have easily have taken them from her, but they knew, I can't tame it without it, like maybe if she gives it to me, then it'll be fine, but if I take it, it may not want to.
Yeah.
And the other thing is simply, if I take it, then anyone else can see and say, well, I can take it from them.
Yeah.
And then it might make right. You can almost see as a reflection of what happens in Westeros. Renly says, well, Robert won the battle of the Trident, and now he was king.
Yeah, so
why can't I? Yeah. It opens the door for that.
But I think that the understanding of that, dragons are something incredibly powerful. They're magical, and you can't just go and steal them.
And I can't, the lack of realism. Also, they said the viewer confusion. I said people were arguing, why isn't she now the wealthiest woman in Carve? No one else knows, but that vault is empty. Yeah. She could have used that. She just said, well, I've killed him because he was involved in this, and I'm now the wealthiest woman in Carve. And she could have played it off, and rather than looting his, show possessions, she could have done something to get people to give her a massive loan based against the vault or whatever. Why not? I mean, again, they didn't really think it through. And she even said, I learned this lesson. Thank you for this lesson about the idea of evolution. I mean, first off, the whole Zoro tricking everyone to believing he's the wealthiest man in Carve is...
I mean, this was them getting stuck on the whole power is an illusion, power is what you think it is, and failing to see. And then perhaps they realized, well, Karth is all about illusions, so we'll use this. And they didn't think it through. They really didn't think it through.
I wish they had at least given him some mundane wealth in it. If the vault hadn't been empty, it had some wealth in it, but it's like, it's pretty normal kind of wealthy guy. You're not like that wealthy. And that's why I've tricked everyone, using my bits of wealth to kind of float loans and convince people or something. I mean, he's kind of like the Bernie Madoff of Karth, and it doesn't... It's so weak. I would have dropped the whole coup anyways in the end, and the stealing of the dragons. Okay, I mean, we disagree on it. Fine, if they absolutely must put the dragons in danger, fine, I guess, fine, but just drop the coup. Don't make it that politics.
I just think it ruins too much later on, but then again, who knows what we're getting later on. So.
Yeah, I would have, and of course, I mean, this is another thing where I think I would have had the House of Undying in episode 8. I would have given those extra 10 minutes to episode 8, really, basically, and have 10, and then basically 10 would be her final chapter in the Clash of Kings, which I guess is how we'll start the first episode of a new season, but I thought that would have worked pretty well. The House of the Undying. Where to begin with the House of the Undying?
Yeah, well, I think we certainly, in our episode guide, or episode review for episode 10, we went into a lot
quite a lot of details. So
I think we'll just say that it's such a strong sequence in the books. It reveals a lot about the past, a lot about the future, a lot about the present. For them to cut out everything, not even leaving that blue rose in the wall.
It was a shock, yeah.
It was a shock.
It was a big mistake, and people say, we can't show all of this, and we're not saying we want all of this.
No.
Oh, it's just an Easter egg. No, it's not an Easter egg.
No.
Yes, the hardcore fans will know that blue rose and say, oh, wonderful, they got it in. Yeah. Most people won't. They'll go, what is that symbol? What does that mean? Or they may not pay attention to it, but some of them will say, what does that mean? That's intriguing. Did anyone else notice that blue rose? You can imagine you post on Television About Pity in the Unsullied thread. What is that blue rose about? Does anyone know? Have we seen one of those before?
Yeah.
Does anyone know what it means?
Yeah. Why this complete fear of the mysteries and complete fear of the past?
Why not hint at things that people don't understand?
If they're going to be, shoving all of this in later, it's not going to have the same effect as if you're building it up slowly.
And as I said, they had the rare opportunity of being the show that lays down mysteries that have answers that will reveal much later, and they have answers now.
No,
they know.
Yes, it's not like shows that will be stuffing in mysteries along the way, and then they realize that they didn't really have a plan for how to deal with them. Well, they have a plan. Yes, it's not entirely finished. George hasn't written the last chapter yet, but
they know.
They know that he's got a plan for the prophecies.
They know. I think they know the answers to many of them.
They
George
know the
has explained
answers,
to them.
I'm pretty sure.
So
yes.
they have no real excuse
No.
not to use them, other than they don't like enigmas and mysteries.
No.
They don't think readers. I think it's a complete mistake on their
which
part.
is a fear of mine, that they are radically going to be changing how the story ends up, and that's why they're not seeding some of these mysteries.
Do you think that means they basically don't like George's answer? Would you? What be your take? That like George has told them how to ending and say, oh, you don't really like that.
It's possible, or they feel that they can't do it.
Not impossible. Well, I think I know what the last chapter is, and I don't see why they can't do that.
No, but some of the other answers along the way
Yes,
might
okay,
prove difficult to deal with.
But yeah, I feel this is a rare opportunity. You know, the show's not going to collapse because they tossed in a couple of enigmatic things that can't be answered. The show, did the Red Room and the Black Lodge collapse Twin Peaks? I mean, Twin Peaks fell apart for entirely unrelated reasons.
Yeah.
X-Files, I mean, did the whole thing, the collapse there is because the myth arc was being made
as they went along,
and it became more and more convoluted. But they don't have to; they just know what it is. That's it.
Yeah.
Are they just afraid that people will figure it out? Well, the thing is, there are people who figure out or who hit on a possible solution to a central mystery.
Yeah.
From the very first book.
Yeah.
When you told me to go, when I first picked up the book and then read it, and then you said, "Hey, there's 4 where people have this cool idea about John," and like, "Oh, really?" I mean, we didn't get it on our own.
No.
We had other people point it out, but there were people who got it right off. Well, I'll say this. I worked on Subtext edition, annotated edition of Game of Thrones. Subtext is an app for the iPad, and you get various books, and it's a social reading app where people can put down notes, and I was one of the experts. And the other expert for 2 others, Sean Collins of BoiledLever.com, great site, you should read that one, and Anne Grohl, the editor of the series, and she mentions one of them that after she first read the book, they had gotten the book and she was going to start editing it, George asked her, "Do you know who John's mother is?"
Well, we also know that he asked David and Dan the same way.
Yes,
But it wasn't just after Game of Thrones. So I
but
think
they read the first 4 books before they
read the
met
first
him.
one, but then...
So, but Anne Grohl, after the first book, he asked her that question, and she says she guessed right.
Yep. That's why she's an editor.
That's why she's an editor, I guess. So, the fact is, there are people who can get it based on all sorts of things.
Yeah.
There's several options in that book. Okay, one of them is right, and the others are wrong. But basically, you can figure it out, or you can sort of get the clue, and it's there, and it does not destroy the story for people.
People have been discussing this for 15 years. People who, I have been convinced for, I don't know, 12 years, I guess. 12.
Kings,
yes, really, 14 years then. I've been absolutely convinced, completely unshakable. It doesn't change anything. It's just really cool getting the pieces slowly and seeing how they fit together. It's the journey that matters.
The journey it's the whys of it. It's not just the what. So they shouldn't be afraid of people figuring it out. They shouldn't be afraid.
Oh, and they shouldn't be afraid of people not figuring it out either, because it doesn't ruin.
It doesn't ruin the experience.
No. And I think people today who are into solving mysteries on shows, they go online and they discuss things. So there's a whole new way of watching, and just like people are interacting with books in a different way, people are interacting with TV shows in a different way. So you cannot hide mysteries completely, and I don't think you should be leaving them out either. So it's I don't think they quite understand.
Yeah. No. So we had a lot of issues with how they dealt with that. It's more of an issue not just about Dany, but just sort of their approach to the fantasy and its tropes and things.
It seems like the action fantasy gets in, like dragons burning things and zombies walking all over, but the more subtle qualities, the prophecies and just the connection between
the past and the future,
they seem to be very, very focused on the here and now story, as if that's all they can deal with, and that really isn't a Song of Ice and Fire then, because they're cutting out so much.
Yeah. I have a note about Jorah. There's not really a lot to say about England. Yeah. Another charming, wonderful, and if you follow George's blog, he's actually going to be reading the audiobook for Dying of the Light. That's George's first novel.
He certainly has the voice for it.
Yes, I've seen people say he should read he should read audiobooks. He has a great voice. It'll be great. No publication date on that one yet, but when it's out, definitely pick it up. It's a very revealing book about some of George's views. It's a very kind of maudlin and romantic, tragic story. I think there's a character in there who is basically a precursor both to the Hound and Sir Loras Tyrrell, which is an interesting mix. And I think that's the one. Actually, I was thinking about that one just yesterday, and I was thinking that more than ever convinced me that I know what the final chapter of the whole series is supposed to be. Just about the tone and the atmosphere and sort of bittersweet.
Yeah,
that's
what George has been saying all along.
But Jorah, not too much else to say about his character. Just the whole trust thing was interesting. And also the weirdness where she sends him off, and then it sounds like he's left the city.
Yeah.
And suddenly he's run back, and I don't quite follow what was happening.
No, it's the whole time and space thing again.
Yeah, teleporting around. And with that, we're done kind of talking about things geographically.
Yeah.
Now, I had one thing else I was going to discuss, the structure.
Yeah.
Now, I'll see if I can put on the link here. There was an interesting post at a site called Just TV, justtvwordpress.com. I believe this is an associate professor at the university who's a media and television. And I called The Scenic Rhythms of Game of Thrones, and he was noticing, how it finished. And he compared Game of Thrones with a bunch of other shows, kind of randomly, like The Wire, and I think The Sopranos, and Breaking Bad, in terms of how many scenes per hour, and how many focal stories you have. Game of Thrones has 16 scenes in that finale, essentially, and 12 focal points, which was, to him, absolutely shocking. He compares it to The Wire, for example, and that's a show, if you've watched it, many people consider novelistic. It's like the most novelistic, it's like the most critically lauded television show in history. It survived off the critical adoration, essentially. And people say, oh, The Wire was cheap to make, and that's partly no. It cost apparently $50 million an episode to make it, and that was back in 2002, 2004 money. So it is entirely
comparable,
really. But it was much more. As I said, The Wire is much more in tune with television rhythms. 44 scenes and 12 focal points. Now he said basically we did a lot of cuts, and he would show little segments of story and feed it on. And it says, now I don't know if that's transferable. I don't believe I'm not sure if that's really transferable to an adaptation of Song of Fire. I think it'd be George doesn't necessarily have a lot of in his chapters, a lot of break points that you can go break along in that quick choppy way.
It might be more of a modern setting as well.
But
so the ratio to scenes to focal points
is you have longer scenes basically. I mean 16. Yeah. That means you're taking almost basically you're taking 4 minutes a scene, and the others are basically doing a minute and a half a scene. But the danger is having that crazy scene to focus ratio. So I think to me, should they reconfigure the crosscut? I don't think they can do it that much. No. But I do think that maybe they should consider having done, like, as I said, 8. They should have finished some of the stories at 8, and it stopped.
Yeah.
If they really need to catch up those characters, do a little 10-second montage.
This whole thing about having to see each character in each episode is, or as much as
possible. I mean, I recall last season, there was some character we basically don't see for 2 episodes, and I can't recall who it was.
Wasn't it John, actually?
I think it was John.
Yeah.
I think
or The Wall in general, that we skipped The Wall for.
For 2 episodes, and then we get back to it. I think that works pretty well. I'm sure someone will say, oh, well, we did skip so-and-so for 2 episodes here, but I think more of that. Now, Maureen Ryan was talking to her and Ryan McGee on their podcast. She wondered, perhaps, should they go to an anthology approach? How do you think that would work very well? The anthology approach being the idea that an episode will just focus on 3 or 4 characters, and everyone else can go hang, and the next episode will have 3 or 4 other characters, and you'll basically...
I don't think I would personally mind watching like that. I think that could be interesting. I think that they don't trust their audience enough. We have seen plenty of evidence that they don't trust their audience. They don't trust that people would have the patience.
Yeah.
Since there's so many other things where they're showing that they seem to feel that the audience has a lack of patience. So I could never see them considering anything like that.
And in the end, as we said before, I think this season had too many masters. It had.
Yes, I think
the actors were given too much.
I think they were enamored with some of their actors and really wanted to showcase them as opposed to focusing on the story. I think that they got stuck on this whole idea of the season of romance, and I don't know where that came from and why they thought that was a good idea. And I think that they showed that they have problems when they venture entirely out of the material. I think that perhaps they are lulled into thinking that we're still working within, the A Song of Ice and Fire setting, so these things that we throw out, we don't really need to create the underpinnings for it. But the characters that they create or substantially change, or the storylines that they create or substantially changed, don't hold up to scrutiny in the way that George's storylines and characters hold up to scrutiny. The distinctions are very clear.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably pretty true. I think I'm more or less along those lines.
I really wanted to like this season. I think people, will say that because I've been very negative and I'm not happy with it, and I don't. I'm not really looking forward to the show any longer. I'll probably be watching dutifully to be able to cover it, but they've taken so much out of it that are the things that I love the most about A Song of Ice and Fire, because people love it for different reasons.
Yeah.
If you love it for the action, you're probably still happy.
Yeah.
But I really liked the first season, and I thought they missed some of my favorite scenes. Well, they got one of my three favorite scenes. They got one of them basically. That was the birth of the dragons, and that was so well done, and the music and everything. And I thought, wow.
And they managed a good scene with the Jorah and Sarah scene. Although they had that was a favorite scene of yours. So
no, absolutely. They added things that really felt like, oh, these are the little glimpses that we didn't get to see because they were point of view characters were not present, and it still felt as if it very much fit in to the universe and it fit in with the characters. And I didn't feel that the extra scenes this year were able to do that largely.
Yeah. No, it was a difficult season. I think in the first season, I was going to ask sort of what were your problems with the first season, just to kind of give a context for our complaints. Because we both felt the first season really stuck much closer to the book.
Yes, I think
it's easier. It's an easier one to write.
It is easier, absolutely. My big problem, the thing that I constantly got hung up on, was Lena Headey as Cersei. Yeah. She was the only thing that really disappointed and annoyed me. And
Emilia Clarke, since you have.
I was happy with Emilia Clarke in the first season. Yeah. Maybe not as happy as what I was with Harry Lord as Viserys. I think he much more nailed his character than she nailed her character.
Okay.
But I was quite happy with her. There were things that are the same in the first and second season that I was unhappy with then and I'm unhappy with now, and that's the visual choices.
Yeah.
I had nothing good to say, unfortunately, about the costume design. I cannot understand this whole idea of having to go away entirely from what George wrote. Yeah. And so, if I compare it to an adaptation that I love, which is Lord of the Rings, where I don't know the material as well. I know it well, but I don't know it as well as A Song of Ice and Fire. So I may not react as strongly to some of the story changes. But what I felt there was that obviously they have a film budget, but because they captured the visuals and the sound of Middle-earth, I have, even if there are scenes and characters that I could have quibbles with, I'm still going to Middle-earth.
Yeah.
I don't feel with Game of Thrones that I'm going to Westeros. This is not Westeros. It doesn't match in any way Westeros of my mind or of the books, and so I think there are very few of those stirring moments that really grab me. They managed one in the first season, and that is the birth of the dragons, which with the music and the staging of it, even though it's not spot on from the books, still gets very strong. And they managed one in the second season, which is Theon's rebaptism. Again, I think the starkness of Pike and the look of that really captured such a, that's not even something we see.
Yeah.
So it's not actually a moment from the books as such, but it's still, that felt like Westeros.
Yeah. So, I think, I would rate the second season if you put it on a 10-point scale. On the forum, this season has definitely had a bit of a fall from the previous season. I believe it's like a 7.9 of 10. In the previous season was like more closer to an 8.5.
Okay.
I myself, and it's funny, I was thinking I would probably give season 1 about an 8.5. I'm very much in line there. This season I have more issues. I'm not. It's like a huge difference for me. It's very funny because I'm at a 7 of 10, and suddenly that's sort of anathema to people.
Yeah.
But where I'm saying, I'm not that far off from the average of the board.
Yeah.
It's just I have a lot of issues with some of the things they've done. I like a lot of it, but at the same time, there's a lot more problems this season than there was last. And some of it, yes, but the things I really take them to task for are the things where I don't understand. It's not budget.
No.
It's not time. It's a lack of will to do it.
Yeah.
And why did you decide to do this instead of that? And I think bad adaptation choices, actors being put ahead of the story. I think a lot of those things can be playing that way, or they didn't think it through enough. Some of the things, the sloppiness. But I especially after episode 6, because it's much more marked. There's sloppy scene direction. Production crunch, it made the production time schedule was even more insane than the last season.
Blackwater taking too much time, or
Blackwater took too much time. Also, they were saying, I think they said they were shooting 2 units or even more often than they were. So we lost track of some things. But the main thing for me was that the changes that felt like they weakened the story and they didn't give us anything better. Rose Leslie. Repetitive scenes of Kit Harington, great chemistry. They didn't do anything for me because they were once was enough.
Yeah.
Tywin and Arya scenes, substituting for character development, and Harrenhal is a linchpin for her character. It is the central point that defines her character, even more than her father's death.
Yeah.
What happens at Harrenhal sets her on the course she's on. And they say, "Oh, we have to stop it and put that later," because I don't think they slowed it down, but they stopped it from episode 4 on. They stopped it, and they thought the Tywin and Arya scenes were a substitution. Well, they were great scenes, but again, too many times, and they're not really a substitute for character development. But in the end, it's a 7 out of 10 for me. I'm really hoping that the slowing down of a season by splitting book 3 into 2 seasons will allow them to do a better job of being smart about this.
Unfortunately, my fear is that leaves them a lot of room to invent things, and I just don't have the faith in them that they really get the material enough to invent things. It needs to be based on George's underpinnings to feel like A Song of Ice and Fire. So
you would give the first season a what out of 10?
Gosh, I'd probably be in the, I guess, 8 to 8.5. I think that's pretty fair.
And this season?
4 to 5.
4 to 5. Okay.
So somewhere around there.
No? Yeah. I mean, and there's people, you're not the only one who said they've kind of tired of a show. I've seen it's kind of interesting.
I mean, I gave the last episode a 1, basically. It was...
I mean, obviously the Dany and that House of Undying is so central to your...
Yes, but I was really disappointed in how they handled the final scene. I didn't think that was a strong choice at all, and they said the meaningful look between the other and Sam.
Is that a rule?
There wasn't really anything in that episode to lift it from the low point that
the House of the Undying was
Tyrion's the finding, he... That
was good.
But basically, I mean, the House of the Undying puts it at like a -10, so maybe Tyrion lifts it up a bit, basically. Right. I was just...
Yeah, you're not the only person who was really disappointed with that final scene. Again, if you look at the... I think it's Firewall Iceberg, that's Stephen Wald and Daniel Feinberg. Their podcast. Those were 2 critics who were not exactly effusive about that finale. So
I mean, and I want this. I so want to be proud of this show and want to be able to tell people, look, this is fantasy done really, really well. It should be able to be held to the same standards as any other show on TV. You should be able to pick apart the writing and see the same sort of depth and symbolism and whatever you're looking for as in Mad Men or whatever, because if you compare George's writing is of that class.
No, I agree with you. I mean, there's I won't say, obviously he's written very big books. I can't say that every page of his is up to the standards of what Matthew Weiner and company have turned out. But then again, some people say that not every minute of Mad Men has been to the same standard.
They've written quite a few lines less.
Yes, but at the same time, yes, I mean, it's one of my big questions I wish I had asked. I had intended to ask Mo and Ryan. Do you feel
hold it to a different standard?
Do they hold it to a different standard? Because it's a genre show. Because it's expensive.
And I mean, I'm not even that impressed for a genre show.
Yeah. Does the old Robin Hood remain your peak of fantasy television?
Well, I mean, I can't say that it dealt with any deeper themes or anything like that, but at least it I thought it was very entertaining and had characters that I cared quite a bit about. I think that, but if you compare to if you broaden outside of fantasy and such, I think that Joss Whedon has done a lot of things that are a lot smarter.
Oh, true.
And B5, I think it has a hard time competing with
Babylon 5.
Babylon 5. That's some really thoughtful, smart stuff, and that handles its mythos very well. And they have a ready-made mythos, and they're not using it.
Yes,
makes me so frustrated.
I can tell you're frustrated. I think a lot of people are frustrated with it, so we'll just have to hope that it improves. The thing is, no one wants the improvements to make the show worse for non-readers. But I think people are underselling the non-readers quite a lot, because
well, fine, I see people who are tweeting and saying that I watched half an hour of Game of Thrones and there haven't been any boobs, I'm bored.
But you can't aim it at those people. You cannot have the senior vice president for boobs say, okay, let's throw more boobs at it because...
Yes, well, apparently we do have a
executive producer for perverts. Executive producer for perverts, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's... no word yet on where Neil Marshall will be invited back to direct more episodes. We'll see. I hope so. I hope his remarks don't poison that well, but...
Except I could do with a little less gore. I still haven't watched most of the actual fighting in Black Bottom.
No, that's true.
That's me.
It's going to be David Nutter just doing the last 2 episodes of season 3. So it may not be so gory. We'll see. And that is the end of our very long 2-part overview of the whole season. Our views, our thoughts on a number of topics. Doubtless we've missed topics. I just realized, like magic. And the use of magic we didn't really discuss at all, but we won't be discussing it. So this is the end of season 2 coverage for us, I think. I don't imagine we're going to be doing anything more. We will be doing a Song of Ice and Fire, book-based stuff. I've got a video queued up now about the history of the Kingsguard and Aerys's reign. But probably next week I'll post or something like that. But thank you so much for your support, for all the followers, for the likes, for the comments, the interesting discussions. Especially thank you to everyone who's kept it nice and polite and has not gone off on people. Hopefully we'll be doing this again next year, and maybe we'll both be happier. Maybe it'll be better.
Certainly, if it turns out that they're getting more on course and getting things in there, I'm not gonna sit there and grumble. I'm forever going to be sad about the things that I didn't get to see this season, but if I get to see some of the things that I really want to see and see the characters in the light that I'd like to see them, I'm not going to pass up on that opportunity.
So say we all. And on that note,